Don't let the purr of my house pamper distract you. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole looking at one of the most cursed Pokemon out there. Something that might be even more cursed than Skibidi toilets for that matter. And yes, it is Sudowoodo. If you saw the thumbnail, you guys already know. And if this is just playing in the background and you didn't actually select my my video intentionally and just got curious, yes, we are talking about Sudowoodo today. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole looking at some obscure Pokemon, and while I competed in the good old days of the Sylph Arena in Pokemon Go with Sudowoodo and had some relatively decent success, VGC is a bit of a different scenario. Sudowoodo, you don't really see it ever. And there's a good reason for that. But Sudowoodo has one of the funniest meme potential ideas. So let's jump right on into Showdown and bring up the Tree of Honor here. And here we are with Sudowoodo. And this thing here gets access to Head Smash and Rockhead. This is going to be a fun gimmick idea to try out. And the whole point here is Rockhead is an ability that negates the recoil damage from moves such as, say, Head Smash, Wood Hammer, Double Edge, all of which are great heavy hitting moves. The one drawback here is Head Smash does have an accuracy of 80. If you guys have seen me play my Emboar video, yeah, I missed Head Smash so much to the point where I made a compilation video about how bad it was to use Emboar. Yeah, but anyways, Head Smash, if it connects, it's got a whopping base 150 power, which it's also a stab rock type move, so you might as well try it, and you could maybe make a gravity strategy work around it, and if you pull it off, that's amazing. I would love to hear about it if you decide you're going to try it yourselves. As far as Sudowoodo's other abilities go, we have Sturdy and Rattled. Sturdy here, so long as your HP is full, it's essentially a built-in focus sash. If you take a hit that would have otherwise knocked you out, Sturdy will keep you around with 1 HP. It also protects the user of the ability from any instant knockout moves such as, say, Fissure, Sheer Cold, Horn Drill, stuff like that. They don't work on a Sturdy Pokemon, which is nice. And then Rattled raises your speed stage or raises your speed stat 1 stage each time you get hit with either a bug, dark, or ghost type attack, or if you run into the intimidate ability. So on a special attacker, that could be really nice because of the intimidate, lowering the attack stat. A special attacker wouldn't care about that because they're relying on their special attack stat, obviously. Now, a physical attacker like Sudowoodo, that might be a little bit more problematic, but I think you could potentially make Rattled work. But we're here to talk about Rockhead for the majority of this video here. So, Rockhead. I already covered Head Smash. Let's cover the other two moves here, and that being Wood Hammer being a grass type attack with base 120 power, and Double Edge being a normal type attack with base 120 power. Now, Steel types are going to laugh at this because Steel types wall all 3 of these types, but opposing Rock types, they don't. They really do not appreciate the Wood Hammer, and if you get a Steel type that wants to Terastallize away from the Steel typing, it could be hilarious to bring in Sudowoodo and do some major damage with that. As far as Tera types go for Sudowoodo, I think Grass is a really awesome candidate for Terastallization on Sudowoodo, since you become immune to Rage Powder, so you don't have to worry about opposing redirection. You also become immune to Spore, so you don't have to worry about Pokemon like, say, Amoonguss putting you to sleep. You don't have to worry about Sleep Powder, the move, as well, so you don't have to worry about faster Pokemon trying to put Sudowoodo to sleep if you do go for Tera Grass. And on top of that, Wood Hammer gains Stab. So it's a nice blend of both an offensive and defensive Tera for Sudowoodo. Now, another great option that I think could work on Sudowoodo, if you really wanted to torture yourself, is Tera Fire. And the reason why I think Tera Fire could be great is because you become immune to Burn. Fire is a decent defensive type to begin with. And on top of that, while you do keep your water weakness that Sudowoodo would have in its base rock typing, you do end up gaining a resistance to grass, which is relatively nice at the end of the day. You also keep your ground type weakness too, I just thought of that, but that's not really the point. The point is you gain a grass resistance, which would otherwise threaten Sudowoodo, since Rillaboom is super common within the meta. So you don't have to worry about opposing grassy glides or wood hammers. Opposing wood hammers off of anything would be really bad for Sudowoodo. So being able to resist that either by going Tera Fire or Tera Grass could be really nice at the end of the day. And that's the other thing too about Tera Grass is you do become resistant to both water and ground type attacks, which would threaten Sudowoodo with its rock typing, while fire would give you a resistance to grass and steel. So that is kind of the nice thing about Sudowoodo being a base rock type. It's got so many weaknesses to begin with. Terastallizing away from them is going to be an instant plus. And I didn't talk about this yet, but Sudowoodo's fourth move here is Sucker Punch. So you have a little bit of priority to get around the low speed stat on Sudowoodo, so long as there's no psychic terrain on the field, no Armor Tail, no Queenly Majesty, or Dazzling from Bruxish. I always forget about Bruxish, and I can never pronounce it right, so my apologies for the one fan out there of the psychic fish. But anyways, point is, Sucker Punch could be great for picking off a weakened opponent, or just to get a little bit of a last-minute haymaker out there with Sudowoodo before Sudowoodo goes down. As far as item choice, I think you could run an Assault Vest here, which is what I currently have on Sudowoodo, to get a 50% boost to the special defense. And this does let Sudowoodo choose between its moves, which is going to be relatively handy for the coverage here. But you could choose to run a Choice Band instead, and if you do that, you're going to be locking into the first move you use, so be very careful if you decide to lock into Head Smash. But you lock into the first move you use, in exchange you get a 50% boost in attack power, which could be relatively nice on Sudowoodo, because as far as your stats go, Sudowoodo has a base 100 attack stat. Not the highest attack stat out there. This is a Generation 2 Pokemon, so back then there wasn't really that much of a power creep or a high bar to set. But back in the day, like, base 100 attack was a lot higher than, like, that darn inflation. Like, it makes things worse. But anyways, the point is, you have a base 100 attack. A Choice Band boosting that up by 50% could be really nice. And the way how I was thinking EV-wise, you invest heavily into your HP and your attack. In this case, I have 252 into both the attack and the HP with an Adamant Nature to hit 177 HP and 167 attack. Getting that Choice Band 50% boost could be really nice. And then the remaining 4 EVs into the special defense to bring it up from 85 to 86. Now, if you run the Assault Vest, you're getting a 50% boost to that 86 instead. So you're getting an extra 43 points right there. So you're sitting at a little bit over 120 with the Assault Vest. And if you're running the Choice Band, well, you're definitely sitting over 200. I'm not really feeling the greatest to do the mental math on half of 167. But anyways, we're just going to bring up a calculator instead. So half of 167 is going to bring us up to 250 right there. So that is a very respectable attack stat right there. Having a 250 attack, not a lot of Pokemon are going to appreciate base 120 powered moves and higher coming off of a 250 attack stat. So that could be really nice. And plus, having Sucker Punch, while it would be risky since Sucker Punch does have to rely on your opponent going for a damaging move, Sucker Punch would still leave a considerable dent as well. And the other thing too is Basculegion is starting to pick up some usage. Like, I saw Basculegion get used in the Baltimore regional streams, so having Sucker Punch to hit that for super effective damage or even neutral damage could be really nice as well. So there is that to consider with the Sucker Punch, so it could be worth the risk of running Sucker Punch. Or, like I said, if you wanted to run the Assault Vest, and then that way you don't have to necessarily lock into Sucker Punch, you could do that too. And just for the sake of the argument, you could run, say, a Life Orb instead, and then this way you can choose between your moves, and then you could potentially run Protect instead. I would honestly say maybe just drop the Double Edge in this case. Keep the Sucker Punch so that you have the priority, but then just drop double edge for protect, and then that way Sudowoodo can keep itself around. So I think that could be really nice as well. And Annihilate could potentially be a fun Pokemon to have next to Sudowoodo, especially a choice Scarfed Annihilate, and I think this would work really nicely with the Assault Vested Sudowoodo. Since you're already trying to patch up your special defense, why not patch up your physical defense as well? Because you could have choice Scarfed Annihilate with coaching. You're immune to Fake Out to begin with Annihilate, which is really nice on the off chance your opponent brings in an Intimidate Pokemon like, say, Paldean Tauros, Incineroar, even Hisui and Quillfish, or Overquill for that matter. If they hit Annihilate with a Intimidate, well, Defiant will activate. You'll go up +2 in attack, meaning you'll be sitting at +1 by the time the equation balances itself out. So you could even just forego the coaching and go for a close combat instead. And honestly, you could potentially have some fun mixing it up with a choice Scarfed Annihilate. If you wanted to go a little bit more on the damaging route, you could invest max speed and max attack on a choice Scarfed Annihilate, and then that way you have an extremely fast close combat or coverage move of choice. Or if you wanted to run more HP investment and just instantly remove something, especially if the coaching might not necessarily work for Annihilate, you could go for Final Gambit. And Final Gambit is a fighting type attack, and technically it's only single use because it does cause Annihilate to faint, but if Annihilate connects the Final Gambit, and so long as you don't run into an opposing Ghost-type Pokemon, Final Gambit does damage equal to the user's HP. Not a lot of Pokemon love losing 217 HP in one go. A lot of Pokemon get knocked out. Now, there are some bulky Pokemon like, say, Dondozo that naturally have 226 EV or HP roughly without any EV investment, so you got to be a little bit careful with choosing who you're going to Final Gambit, but you could potentially do something like that. But the main point here is the coaching takeaway is where to go for supporting the Assault Vested or Choice Banded Sudowoodo. You get a +1 attack and defense into the ally Pokemon of whatever Pokemon is using coaching, and then you can now rack up the damage. And plus, if you get to a +1 attack on the Sudowoodo with that 167, you're sitting at the 250 without the choice band as well. So you get a little bit of the best of both worlds, and plus you get a 50% boost into your defense with no investment on Sudowoodo's defense. You're sitting at 135. If you get that 50% boost from a +1 defense right there, you're sitting at 202 defense, which is really, really good. Now you're bulky on the physical side while being able to threaten some offensive pressure onto your opponents with Sudowoodo, especially too if you have that Tera Grass or Tera Fire defensive attributes working in your favor. So that's what I was thinking about Rockhead Sudowoodo. Let's talk a little bit about Rattled. So Rattled, I don't know how I feel about it, but I think it's hilarious, especially if you can make it work. So as far as the EVs go on this thing, I have 116 EVs on Sudowoodo just to bring it up to 65, and this is without a benefiting nature. And the main reason why I was thinking about that is depending on how you want to hit Sudowoodo with your own dark or bug type attack, depending on where you get to, stat modifier wise, you could be sitting at a really interesting time. So it's a good thing I brought up the calculator earlier because we're going to be needing it. So what you could potentially do is you could run, say, Pin Missile with Jolteon and a loaded dice. Now, this feels like a lot of resources, but hear me out. If you have the loaded dice, you're guaranteed to hit 4 times minimum. You might even get a 5th hit. We're going to be just factoring in with the bare minimum of 4 hits for this particular scenario. So when you get to a +4 in any stat, you are at 3 times the base stat total. So right here, we're at 65. If we get to that +4, we're going to be multiplying 65 by 3. And this is going to put us up to 195 speed. Now, you're going to be taking a little bit of chip damage from the Pin Missile, but you're now at 195 speed. That is an insanely fast Sudowoodo right there. Now, you could also potentially not run the loaded dice. And in that case, now you're looking at a minimum of 2 for your speed. Well, if you multiply 65 by 2, because a +2 modifier does double your stat, you're going to be sitting at 130. Not the fastest right there, but it's still a fairly respectable speed for a Sudowoodo of all things, since this thing does have an initial base 30 speed. So 130 would be the slowest you would get off the pin missile if you weren't running a loaded dice. And if you, say, got a +3, you're at a 2.5 times modifier. So if you bring up the 2.5 times 65, you're hitting 162 speed. Now, that could be fairly realistic right there. And you don't necessarily have to run Pin Missile off of the Jolteon. You could run Beat Up. Beat Up will do damage based off the amount of healthy allies that you have. So basically non-fainted Pokemon. Mousehold could be really nice for this too, because it also has Friend Guard to reduce the damage, and Beat Up is a dark type attack. So basically, you'd be hitting Sudowoodo. I'm not sure how it works on your ally partner. If you were attacking your opponent, you'd hit a minimum of 4 times if all 4 of your Pokemon were healthy in a double battle. I'm fairly certain it's still the same, so you would still hit 4 times. You might only hit the 3, which is why I'm kind of second guessing it. I don't quite remember the mechanic because I don't use Beat Up a whole lot. But the main point is, you could be hitting anywhere between 3 to 4 hits with Beat Up, and you're hitting those same speed totals that I was just talking about right there. So you could get Sudowoodo up really fast. Now, that leaves the question of what do you want to do with the remainder EVs if you want to have that 116? Well, you could invest into your attack stat, and if you wanted to, you could go max investment to hit that 167. Now you have an insanely fast Sudowoodo with access to a very reliable Rock Slide at this point, which has a 30% chance to make the target flinch, and it's a spread move, so you could potentially do that. But honestly, because Intimidate is also a means of activating Rattled, I think it's better for a Body Press set. So instead of running attack investment, maybe you want to run defense investment. We take out the attack investment. If we wanted to go max defense right here, we hit 183. We have Iron Defense right here to raise our defense stat 2 stages each time we use it. Body Press is a base 80 power fighting type attack that does damage based off of your defense right here. So now, just hypothetically, if you get that Iron Defense off and you're multiplying 183 by 2, you're at 366 with max investment. That's going to do a lot of damage with just very little setup with a +2 defense right there. And if you have the Rattled right there, well, great. Now you're sitting really nice. You could take the remaining 140 EVs, dump it into your HP if you wanted to bring yourself up to 163. Or if you wanted to bump it down to 162, just to add an extra 4 into your attack and your special defense right there. Now you're at 121 physical attack, and you're at 86 special defense. So you could do something like this, or you could just play around with your EVs, maybe lower this to 180 so that you can put a little bit more special defense investment in right there. Bring it down to 80, or bring it up to 89, and you can just go from there. So anyways, that's what I was thinking about Sudowoodo. This thing is a little bit of a meme. I think it's hilarious though. And I would love to hear if you've used it before in the past and you've made it work. I would love to know what ability you used and what kind of a moveset you used as well. Anyways, I've talked on about this for about 20-ish minutes. We're going to sign off right there. Catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.